All right, so let's get this started. I would like to welcome everybody back to the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast. We got a very special guest today, Dr. Meagan Arrastia-Chisholm.
Arrastia-Chisholm, almost.
Arrastia-Chisholm.
Yeah.
Arrastia-Chisholm. Awesome name. That's an absolutely awesome name. Um, and for those of you who don't know, Dr. Meg and I have been talking for about a half an hour before, and I said, we might as well start recording now. We went all the way from CrossFit into the mental fitness side of life. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And before we get into that, so Meg, you are a member of CrossFit Townie.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Okay.
in Thomasville, Georgia.
Oh,
Almost Tallahassee, but not quite.
okay. Gotcha. And you've been involved with CrossFit for about 3 years now?
Yes, just
Okay.
over 3 years.
Just
Yep.
okay. And when asked about mental fitness, you gave like 15 different answers. So you said resilience, cognitive flexibility, curiosity, acceptance, openness to new things, seeking out challenges, gratitude, and mindfulness. So that is hours of content that we could just hit on right there. But I think where I would like to start is curiosity. Um, I'm curious about curiosity because I think, and I mentioned this before, my coach once told me, she said, curiosity is a modern day superpower. And I believe that. I really do, because I think what it does is it doesn't allow us to just close the loop on every bad thing that happens in our life, right? Or every challenging event that we experience. So, what are your views about curiosity?
Well, just now as you were describing that, it made me think of like the connections between my work with people in a counseling setting and in the gym and CrossFit. And curiosity brings them through the door. Like
Mm.
that's the entry point. That's like almost the prerequisite for change, right? So not many people go into a CrossFit gym because I mean, it happens once in a while. Like someone else signed me up, someone else is making me do this, or like counseling could be mandated or something.
Mm.
But that essence of curiosity, that desire to want to learn. Like
Mhm.
if someone walks in and they've got an ounce of that, like, okay, let's go. Like we're going to try some new things and we're going to be open to the
Mhm.
possibilities of what is this going to feel like? And it may not feel good, right?
Mhm.
And it may feel really good. So I think that that's just kind of an exciting feeling and something if you identify it in your
Mhm.
clients and your members and your people around you. It could also be contagious, right?
Mhm.
So someone around in like let's say like yesterday we were doing handstand holds and stuff
Mhm.
and someone may be like terrified to go upside down and just being curious or having that coach or friend be like, hey, let's try it on the box.
Mhm.
Let's just try like some legs or knees up on the box and just see what it feels like. I think that's really motivating, and then that's how you get that foot in the door, that ball rolling, that motivation of that little win and kind of going forward.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I I love the idea of curiosity being contagious.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And
And
also, right, and that's part of being part of the community in CrossFit. Um, we can all be like different walks of life, different jobs, different family backgrounds, but give it a few weeks and you start identifying with these people, and you're like, well, if so and so can do it, maybe I can too,
Mhm.
and then kind of seeing that curiosity and using it to your advantage, especially as a coach.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah. It's it's interesting to think about just how much we change when we're not alone with something,
Mhm.
right? Like when we see other people trying something or doing something that we might be scared to do or not want to do or have a fear of, and it's like, all right, well, they're doing it, right? So like what's stopping me from getting to that point? And I think an interesting thing to kind of focus on is, why do you think some people might struggle with being more curious in their life?
Yeah, I think maybe just exposure too. Like maybe we're not curious about things we don't even know exist because we don't know they exist. And um I something you said just made me think of like, well, maybe no one in the group can do this. Like today is the day they release the open workout, but we're gonna watch some top level athletes do these
Yeah.
workouts that maybe, we can't even fathom doing. Hopefully they'll be easy, but
Yeah.
that kind of like exposure, increasing knowledge, increasing like even I know it's really intimidating for someone just learning the vocabulary of CrossFit at the beginning and just like kind of explaining and trying to relay relevance of, oh, this is, EMOB is like when you've got 5 things you got to do and you don't want to do any of them. So you're just going to do a little bit at a time, take a break and take the next task.
Mhm.
Um, that might help like foster that curiosity of like planting that seed of like, oh, I've never thought of that.
Mhm.
Um, I guess that would take some thinking of like, how do I inspire that curiosity?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I think that when you ask the question in the survey, the reason why that word came up is just like, how do you push forward? How do you change? And I think it just kind of takes an interest, and that
Mhm.
interest could be the question of like, well, how would my life be different if I did this, or that? Or, yeah, what are the benefits? Or what would I lose if I don't
Mhm.
change?
Mhm.
So it can be motivated in that negative kind of
Yeah.
avoidance way too. So,
As you're walking me through this, I had the I had the term my ego start to kind of come up a little bit. And I think with curiosity, there is a attempt to push down your ego a little bit,
hmm.
right? And maybe not think, oh, I know the answer here, or like I'm good with this, or I know me, I don't need to do the handstand push up. I'm good with doing these things, right? Do you see any connection between being more curious and whether it's pushing down or depressing our egos?
Mm, don't know. I didn't really think of that connection. As you were talking, I was thinking more of like risk-taking behavior, like, oh, like I'm not afraid to take some risks because I'm
Hmm.
curious. But part of that is if I'm willing to take risks, then I'm willing to look like a fool or mess up or
Hmm.
fail. I think that's where you're going with it.
Yeah.
And that would hurt my ego. That would hurt my perfect projection of myself. Like
Hmm.
I was training someone brand new today who's never done CrossFit, is like a person who maybe did some athletics growing up and now is, 20 years later. And they were very upset when they couldn't do the movements
Hmm.
as prescribed or whatever. And I was like, listen, you cannot, first of all, I'm going to document this and show you in 3 months. And
Hmm.
you're going to see a change, but let go being perfect. There is no prescription for this moment. There's just movement.
Hmm.
If you're moving, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
That's what I was telling them. Like, we just change the movement until it's something that is achievable. And if you're moving, then you're doing it right. Kind of made me think of when we were talking about yoga before, right? Yoga is just movement with breath connection. And so if you're moving and breathing or you're just breathing, then you're
Hmm.
doing it right. Um, so ditching the ego is definitely part of it, whether you're a beginner or
Hmm.
high level athlete. There's always going to be something that you're some measuring stick that you're not going to measure up against.
Yeah.
Um, and so having to let that go and then just find a different measuring stick, like
Hmm.
that's it. Just find something that fits you and then incrementally change, right? Instead
Hmm.
of having that all or nothing
Yeah.
mentality. But I definitely see where you were going with taking risks, being curious, or shying away from risks,
Hmm.
maybe shutting off that curiosity to save face personally.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's it's almost like we're very consciously trying to stay safe all the time.
Yeah. That makes me think of that concept. And I've heard other people like Ben Bergeron bring it up. And, the idea of like, because if we are rejected, if the
Hmm.
tribe rejects us, right? If we're not liked, if we're not perfect all the time, then we might be left behind. We'll be left alone and
Well,
won't survive alone. And I do have to constantly remind myself, like, that's not going to happen. Number two, like, you know, arguably, like we wouldn't argue this, right? Like we want community and stuff. We're happier with community,
Mhm.
but you actually don't need an entire tribe. Like you're okay, and there are the handful of people that always love you,
Yep.
and but yeah, you're absolutely right. It comes down to some basic insecurities of like, am I
Mhm.
enough?
Yep.
And we don't say that kind of stuff in the box very
Yeah.
often, right? Um uh kind of more towards the like acceptance piece of
Mhm.
it is, sometimes when we're cooling down, I'm just like, take a moment and like be thank your body for everything it's done and
Yeah.
everything it's going to do. It's
Mhm.
already amazing as is. And you know that's why we have different coaches. Some people can take it or leave it. Some people
Yep.
hate it. Some people are like, oh yeah, I don't want to hear it. But that's just my little insertion of like, wow, whether that was the best time you've had on Fran or the worst
Mhm.
time, like it's still amazing that you were able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of like it's almost like you're celebrating your gains instead of noticing your gaps.
absolutely. And when in society do we get to do that? Hmm.
Right? Like I think I think if we become more conscious of it and we actually make it like a practice
Mhm.
where sometimes there might be some people listening to this today who might be like, "What? All right, so what's that going to do? Right? Why am I going to? How is that going to actually change me?" Well, think about it. If you just noticed the things that you did that you were good with, that made you feel good about yourself, or that you achieved, maybe on a daily basis, over time, you would stack up so much freaking evidence of the
Mhm.
things that you're doing. You would almost outwork your doubt or your lack of confidence or your lack of your self-image, I feel.
Well, how about this? You're going to be a better person to be around. Like if you're the person that's always nitpicking, finding the, being critical, finding the deficits, you're doing that of other people too.
Mhm,
And then, so how are you going to be compassionate to your, box mate or to your roommate, your spouse, like all the people around you? Or are you going to be constantly judging them too? Like
mhm,
it is a reflection of how you treat yourself in a way is how you're going to treat the people closest to you. So lifting each other up is what we want, right?
mhm.
And with yourself first.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this comes down to this, you mentioned it earlier, right? Acceptance,
Yeah.
right? And having this compassion for ourselves, and for some reason that seems to be so difficult. I mean, I've been lucky enough to see a bunch of people and ask them that question about like, why do we feel guilty when we take time for ourselves? Right? Or why do I feel guilty when somebody asks me to do something that I love and I love this person, yet I just don't want to do it because I just don't have the energy to do it. Right? Or I need to make sure I'm good. And then we end up feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. Right? I'm not enough. And I've seen it over and over and over again. It's like, will we be enough?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something like working one on one with people when they like want to lose weight or whatever. And you
Mhm,
just ask them, like, okay, what would actually be different? Like, how will you know when you get to that place that, okay, you could stop the
mhm,
deficit or you could, like, like, when is it enough and how will you know? And if they don't really have a good answer,
mhm.
right, it's a deeper issue.
Yeah.
It's not the scale or the body fat percentage. It's let's work on what do you love about yourself, and that's probably not gonna change, with the scale stuff. So, yeah, there's some definitely a lot of deep work that could be done.
Mhm,
Um, but you brought up like why is it so difficult to have compassion with ourselves? You brought up like, spending time and energy on others and that sort of thing. But also it made me think of, well, we are super acceptance and have compassion with newcomers,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
We do. Yeah. So why is it okay in that one context and then not with ourselves? Kind of like
Mhm.
bringing that to light. That
Yeah.
might, well, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think of even like I remember being younger and treating my friends' parents really great, and then not being that nice to my parents. And
Hey, that's a good example.
right,
Yeah.
like why did I need to make sure that my friends' parents viewed me as a respectful young man when I
Hmm.
also wanted my parents to view me as a respectful young man. Yeah. And I think there comes down to, I mean, the way I thought about it in my head, I'm like, all right, I'm more familiar with my parents,
Boundaries. Yeah.
right? So I have different expectations with them where I can be disrespectful and they're still going to love me.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that does like happen a lot working with
Mhm.
people one on one and noticing that we treat the closest people maybe not the best as we
Mhm.
would our strangers and whatnot. And it comes down to the idea that we see ourselves in others. And so, I'm sure you've taken basic psychology, but think about like an infant and a mom, right? They're
Mhm.
one. Like a child doesn't even see themselves as having different thoughts and feelings as another person until maybe two or later.
Mhm.
And then that differentiation process can be really delayed. And so, anyway, right, when we see the people closest to ourselves as us and we don't think we're enough,
Mhm.
then we're basically projecting that they're not enough.
Mhm.
Seriously. And so um it really is that deeper issue. I got off on a tangent. I'm sorry, TJ.
No, I think this connects very on a very deep level to like why do we work out, right?
Yeah.
Why do we do things to make ourselves better? Why do we try to strengthen our ability to get through hard things, right? Like if you think about going into a CrossFit gym, we are deliberately applying pain to our life,
Mhm.
right? We are deliberately applying pressure to our muscles and stress and fatigue.
Mhm.
And so we're choosing to do this. And I think with every choice, there's a deeper reason as to why we're doing it. Right. So what do you think that deeper reason is?
I mean, a lot of times I say it's like short-term pain for long-term satisfaction, right?
Mhm.
That, we are practicing, and I do explain this to people, like we are training our nervous systems,
Mhm.
right? Here, this is short-term sprint, or this is a 3-minute set that we're then going to take a rest after an interval. We're training our nervous systems to deal with adversity with stress and then cope, right? Go get your drink of water, go to the bathroom, walk it out. All these things that we're then regulating our nervous system to deal with that stress, that cortisol spike, all
Mhm.
those things, so that next time it happens, we are prepared when it's unexpected. So
Mhm.
it's like a controlled experiment of like I'm going to impose this adversity. I'm going to impose this stress in a physical sense, and it can absolutely translate to those emotional events: loss, grief,
Mhm.
sickness, disappointment.
Yeah.
um and I think too, and I hope, I'm only 3 years in, right, that yeah, like there are going to be workouts that you're disappointed on, but I have a feeling, or I hope that's managed by other factors, right? That you're able to put it in perspective the longer that you do it,
Mhm.
or that you have just different goals and different things you're getting out of it. Like maybe I'm just going to work out to be around people.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just going to work out because I don't want to be on medication later
Mhm.
in life. And so things can evolve. That's what I'm hoping, that there's,
Mhm.
a long-term gain out of that.
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, everybody in the group is going to be there for different reasons.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
It's almost like our reasons evolve.
maybe, yeah.
Right? Like the reason I started, like I'll say a little personal thing. The reason I actually got involved with fitness as a little kid was because I had a injury to my left arm that made me feel weak, like physically
Mhm.
weak. And I didn't like that. And so I literally just started working out because I thought that's what strong people did. And
Right.
then I fell in love with the actual act of working out and the results, and that led into a life of really committed fitness for a really long time. Right. And I think that also kind of shows that the hard things in our lives can often lead to these really positive behaviors because
Yeah.
more often than not, we'll have a hard thing happen and we then change to manage that hard thing in a way that we know.
Yeah.
And then we continue that behavior. And I'm actually giving a talk about this in a couple of weeks, so hopefully nobody's listening to to this.
No, yeah, and I just gave a talk on something I forgot to mention it in the little survey. You might really like this
Mhm,
framework,
mhm.
post-traumatic growth. So there's, yeah,
Mhm.
is that you're already aware, like you're
No,
already.
no, I explain it because, but I, in my head, it like makes total sense.
So they've done all this kind of research and like just a little snippet of working with college students.
Mhm,
Listen to this. Like, so post-traumatic growth, the trauma can be anything that's traumatic to you.
mhm,
But for this group, for example, was just something called parentification. So being a child where you had to play, right? You had to take the role of the parent. So you could imagine this is like even being a latchkey kid, someone that had to
mhm,
make their own food, take care of siblings for a variety of reasons. It could be something extreme like parental incarceration, or it could be something simple like one parent's deployed, one parent has to
mhm.
work a lot. Anyway,
Yeah.
so take something like that, and they've studied like this is an adversity, and we know
Mhm,
all about childhood adverse experiences and the poor associations with health outcomes.
mhm,
Anywho, so following these people over time, what they found is like when asked about it, they're like, no, I've actually grown so much because of it.
mhm,
So taking something like that could be PTSD or now complex PTSD and looking and reframing and looking, well, what helped the people who actually grew from it instead of sustained long-term health deficits or
yeah.
issues. And so there's 5 areas that they found, like, and this so aligns with CrossFit. You're gonna love
Mhm,
this. So first thing is appreciation for life, gratitude, just like, like I can appreciate food more, I can appreciate
mhm,
movement, all this stuff, right? Building relationships, right? So find a being closer to people, having to be closer to people, right?
mhm,
Or gravitating towards mentors and things like that.
mhm.
Um, Finding your strengths.
This is and it's the exact same thing of CrossFit, basically.
Yeah, like finding your strengths, right? Okay, yeah, we have things that we could work on, great,
Mhm,
but yeah, building on those strengths. Um, Connection with purpose, deeper meaning,
mhm.
spirituality, and now I'm blanking on the last one. Did I say
You're gonna lead us up to the edge, and
yeah,
then
no. Sorry, appreciation for life, building relationships,
finding your
strength,
strengths. Yep.
purpose and spirituality, and openness to new
Openness,
things. So the
which is
curiosity.
one of the things you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
Yeah. So, anyways, that like there's a lot of research now on like different groups of people that have gone through trauma. And it's like, okay, so what helped them instead of hindered them or handicapped them forever? And it's like, finding people, build
Mhm,
mentoring, finding someone like them, being like, oh,
mhm,
they've gone through it, I can get through it too. So definitely like the mentoring or coaching, if you will.
mhm,
Um, and then these practices like mindfulness, that's what my talk was on, like
mhm.
connecting these two things. How can mindfulness push post-traumatic growth instead of the PTSD that we know
Yeah.
so much about? So yeah, that kind of stuff. And I think CrossFit could fit in there. And there's
Yeah.
so many testimonies, right, of people being like, I went through this, that, or the other. It could be something like as common as a divorce or
Mhm,
as traumatic as like losing, being in a natural disaster or
mhm.
um so, or recovering from addiction and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a great program. I can't wait to hear more about your work as well
Mhm. It
on stuff like that.
it really makes me think about how we train our muscles,
Yes.
where, right, like it's almost the exact same thing if you viewed your life as a muscle and you applied pressure to it. You applied hard things to it, right? Pull-ups, right? Burpees, all these things. And then over time, you then got your muscles got stronger. They could handle more hard things, aka lifting more weight.
Yes.
And then outside of the gym, wouldn't I also be able to do more hard things?
But think about this, the trauma would be like you breaking your arm, you
Mhm,
injure like day one, you walk in and you're like, I'm gonna try this 300-pound deadlift and hurting yourself. Like, yes, it would be a setback. However, we know that through rehabbing, right, and
mhm.
positive experiences, you can get even stronger after that injury. Does that
Yeah.
blow the
Yeah.
metaphor?
It
Yeah.
does, because when I actually, so this is so cool that you said this.
Mhm.
When I broke my elbow, when I had that injury as a little kid, it was a very graphic injury. When they took the cast off of my arm was super skinny. Like as a 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid, I remember looking down, looking at my arm, and I immediately looked up and I stopped looking at it because it was like I just really didn't.
Horrific.
Yeah, it was horrific. And the doctor said, your left arm, the bones are actually going to be stronger because they're, I don't know the medical terms of it, but because I broke them, they actually came back stronger from like a calcium buildup,
Exactly. Or
maybe.
calcium.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more calcium. And I remember thinking to myself, like, how? Like this arm is not like physically like they had to take a piece of muscle out of the arm. Like it looks different than my right arm, like if I flex it. Yet from a underneath the skin surface, it's actually stronger than my right arm,
Right.
which
Yeah.
which is so cool to think about, right? So we go through those hard challenges, we go through those traumatic events, right? These really difficult things that are painful. And then over time, that scar, that bruise, it ends up actually building or being built into something stronger.
hmm Yeah, and I think we could like roll this into a whole nother conversation about how sometimes we get injured in the gym and we ignore it
Mm-hmm.
and we keep going without going through the healing process, just like we go through adversity or like maybe we have relationship issues or something and we ignore it and it gets worse,
Yeah.
right? Instead of having that same kind of
Mm-hmm.
effect. So keep that in mind for next time.
Yes, I like to call we have a term that we call that we say pulling a weed
Oh,
before it grows into this nasty thorn bush. And we've actually done a
okay.
lot. We've actually, I'll say this, we've actually done a live weed pulling exercise before where we were with a client at their place of business. And my business partner said, I think what we should do is we should do a live weed pulling exercise where me and our other business partner pulls a weed of him in front of everybody. And I was like, I'm like, so you want us to put you on blast in front of 15
Yeah.
people? And he's like,
Rude.
he said, I think this will get the point across the best. And it was emotional. It was honest. It was authentic. And at the end of the group, everybody's like, okay, we know exactly what this looks like. We have the script of how to do this. Like we got it. And so we've checked back in with them and they were like, we know how to deal with conflict fairly quickly just because we have this respectful way to approach it.
Mhm.
Right. And I think once you really can see just how much someone cares about you, and like, and we say, like, listen, I love you, right? And yep, I understand that, right? You love me. Great. So this is only coming from love, right?
Right.
When you say this to me, you make me feel like a piece of shit. Right? Like, right. So like it establishes this even deeper connection with this person or this group where it's really how like that vulnerability kind of comes to the surface. And it's like, listen, I understand we're human beings and we're trying to figure this out. Yet the way this happens, here's how I'm perceiving it, right? I might be wrong too, right? You might not have that intention at all. And the majority of the time, that's what it is. They don't have that intention at all. And I'm just looking at it from a different perspective.
That sounds like an awesome team building exercise. Yeah.
It is.
Trust thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The team has to be willing to go there, right? That's the challenge with it, right? So,
There's this we had a gym in or a box in Tallahassee
mhm.
that called TLC Trust. No. Oh, Lift. Yeah, maybe it was Trust Lift. I don't know. Anyways, it was a trauma informed gym and they
Okay.
had like at the beginning of every class they had check-ins, they had like all kinds of like, trust check-in points, and at the end
Mhm.
debriefs and all that kind of stuff. And it was the kind of place where you may not be invited back for membership, like depending on what you say.
Really?
Yeah, like
Okay.
if trust wasn't established or if you said something to offend someone, it was
Mhm.
like ultra inclusive and stuff like that. It's no longer. It already closed down within like 2 years, but it made me think of that, how you could implement such an activity within the gym setting. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in being very, I mean, thoughtfully honest with people, right? I'm not trying to be a jerk to you. I'm just actually just being authentic to you, right?
right.
I can say, hey, yeah, the things that you're doing or how you're behaving, whatever, it doesn't affect me yet. At the end of the day, it truly actually does. And here's how. And we're going to grow now as a team collectively, right? And maybe this is something that, to your point, a gym could incorporate, right? As something from, the coaches could talk to the members or the members could talk to the coaches and the owners, right? I feel like there's so many different ways that you could really.
I'm relocating. Sorry.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. So,
I was
Meg, sorry,
in
go
a
ahead.
building. Sorry. So
Yeah, I just think it'd be interesting to kind of have that type of honest feedback and honest communication when it came to a gym owner, the coaches, and the members,
yeah.
right? What that would
It's
look like.
definitely, yeah, more of that kind of group therapy dynamic,
Hmm.
bringing that into a gym. And because there's no actual confidentiality in group therapy, right?
Mm,
Like no one is mandated by law except the therapist in that gym kind of setting. You have to have that agreement and that trust within the
yeah.
members.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it might
that's
be.
I don't know if you had time to ever like that's something I need. I've been thinking a lot about if I were next year to have
Mhm,
that my own private practice. Like, how does that work? How do you even do clinical work in a community you're a part of? Is that possible
mhm.
because of all like the privacy considerations and stuff?
Yeah. The
So I've been kind
confidentiality
of
stuff.
talking to other people, like get
Mhm.
picking people's brains about that. So I'm curious how you handle it with the 8-week program.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So, Meg, one last question. All right. This is how I like to end each episode.
Yeah.
What's one secret that you know that nobody else knows that's helped you live a stronger life?
Yeah, I mean, that made me think just off the top of my head. I don't know if it's a real secret, but I just think variety is a spice of life. Like
Ooh, I love that. Variety is
I
the
just
spice of
think,
life.
yeah, I just think, when you're feeling burnt out and you lose that curiosity, like you need to change. You need to do something different,
Mm,
find a different skill to work on, or find different people to be around, or find a different class time if it's that simple. I just think changing it up, and that's one of the reasons I love CrossFit, right?
mhm.
It's constantly
Yeah.
varied.
It's
And
constantly varied.
I think that that can help us mentally as well. uh, Hence my EMOB style example of you have this list of things to do, you get bored with one, go to the next. And
Hmm.
so I really think that that will keep us entertained, curious, and hopefully satisfied.
Variety is a spice of life. I absolutely love that. So, everybody listening, add a little variety into your life, spice it up a little bit.
Whether it's meal prepping, just add a different spice in there. It'll totally change the meal. So
So Meg, if I have the same breakfast each day, are you telling me to kind of spice it up a little bit?
no, here, 100%. This is what I'm talking about. Like I have like turkey meatballs, right?
Hmm.
Oatmeal mixed with turkey, ground turkey. You can put whatever vegetables, but just add curry powder to 1/4 of the batch. Add taco seasoning to 1/4 of the batch. Add Italian seasoning to 1/4.
So it's small increments.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, no, I'm just saying so that when you make your meatballs, like, some are, you don't even know what you're gonna get. Like, maybe
Oh,
this
it's
is,
so you have no idea. That is really the variety. I love it. I love it. It's what a scary way to live. Well, nonetheless, variety is a spice of life.
yeah. Well, thanks so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Meg, for your time and everything that we covered. We talked about curiosity, acceptance, the appreciation for life, the building the relationships, finding your strengths, connection with purpose, openness to new things. Lots of stuff here. So, plenty of things that people can work on to help themselves improve their ability to handle challenge in and outside of the gym. So, Meg, thank you so much for your time today. Truly, truly appreciate it. And everybody listening in, as always, hope you guys got some value out of today's episode. If you enjoyed it, give us a quick rating. Give Meg a review on the podcast. Right, let us know what you learned, And until next time, go do hard things, go practice mental and physical fitness, and we will talk to you guys soon. We'll see you.